Hi, Miguel. Thank you so much for being with us today. It's a real pleasure. I have to admit, first of all, that I'm a big fan of the peri peri sauce. And for people and listeners who are not very familiar with Nando's, can you tell us a bit more about the organization and also what your role is at Nando's?
Of course, thanks, Jasmine, for having me here. It's a pleasure from my side. So, yeah, I'm Miguel. I work as a technical lead on the engineering team in Nando's UK and Ireland. I lead one of the product teams there, which is in charge of all the authentication and authorization. But first of all, Nando's is a fast casual chain that specializes in flame grilled peri peri style chicken. It's very popular in the UK and Ireland, in South Africa, where everything started there in 1987, and we operate around 1,200 outlets in 30 countries. Yeah, with the most prominent are UK, Australia, and we have quite a few in the US as well, and of course in South Africa.
Wow. Thank you for giving us that overview and quite impressing in terms of size and growth as well. And I know you are quite close to your customer and as part of how Nando's operate. Can you tell us a bit more around what drives you in terms of customers' expectation and also all of the challenges that you've seen in the unprecedented times that we've all had to live through those couple of years?
Yeah, of course. So since the last few years, we embrace a digital transformation within Nando's, and we realize that yeah, lots of people not only order in the restaurants, but they want to find different channels for ordering, like delivery, order at a table, collect, right? So that was one of the main challenges, especially when the pandemic came in, like a couple of years ago. We had to reinvent ourselves. Nando's is very popular for the experience we give in the restaurants to our customers, right? So as soon as someone enters in the restaurant, they feel the values of Nando's, which are pride, passion, courage, integrity, and most of all is family, right? We feel like a big family for all our Nandokas, who are the people who work in Nando's, and the customers, right? So we want to share all these values with everyone who works in the restaurant. So to give you an example, all the different art that you see in the restaurants, all the music that we play in there, everything is very specific of Nando's, right? So how do we embrace that those values into the digital channels? That was the most challenging part of it, especially when the pandemic again, when we had to reinvent ourselves in no time. We had just a few weeks to deliver some features like order at a table or collect, as the restaurants were closed. So for us was a really big challenge.
And it's great to hear about the values. I can personally relate to a lot of these, and I'm sure a lot of listeners too. And it's interesting to say to hear what you said around the customer connection that you want to have online. So can you tell us what was the kind of core feedback that you wanted your or experience that you wanted your customers to have?
The experience we want is that we want to remove as much friction as possible, right? When interacting with our applications, both web and especially the mobile app as well, which lots of customers use to make orders. Yeah, so at least from my team, we had to balance that risk, right? Balance risk versus friction, right? So we were adding extra friction for our customers when asking them to log in and to register to create an account and access our online journey, right? So we had lots of feedback from them saying, "Yeah, guys, you're not a bank. I just want my chicken. I just want to make an order quick and move on," right? So yeah, that was probably one of the most challenging things for my team. We have lots of people on my product team and even from other product teams trying to leverage the experience and the risk, right? So yeah, that was the main one. So we had to work very closely with the security team and the compliance teams to implement best practices. Only ask for what we need at every point in time, right? So we came from a really old legacy systems in the past, and we had to overcome all those and implement our own journeys, right? That works for us. So we need to be really flexible with our underlying APIs and infrastructure. Yeah, so that was the main keys for our customers as well.
So I understand, hearing your feedback. It's really around how do you balance security versus the customer experience, which is one of the main challenge that we also hear from other customers. So from your perspective, how important was the security piece, and how was it received from your customer when you implemented those security policies?
Yeah, so security was always right, very relevant to Nando's, whether we use one technology or the other. Before we used to use custom build solutions and even another third party vendor than Okta. It was kind of working, but we were not able to leverage those APIs, those SDKs that could give us some freedom. So for us was, so the customer basically wanted to don't have any friction, right? They just don't want to give their details. And for us, we wanted to do it. Only ask for the details you need at the very first time, just to make an order, and do the progressive profiling later, right? So if you are going to make an order later, we're going to ask you for a delivery order, we're going to ask you for the address, for example, right? Not before that, because it doesn't make sense. We may not be interested on where you live, right? Maybe UK and Ireland. Maybe we can ask you for that later when you want to receive some communications about specific things. So I think that the customers, by moving into Okta, especially like that, we really make our solutions really frictionless. Even though we had some friction because we need to leverage the security, and we embrace multi-factor authentication, especially for SMS and using SMS and email verification to tackle some issues we had in the past. So that really helped us. Customers really like it, right? So people don't mind adding an extra friction if they know their rewards are going to be secure, because we have a pretty strong loyalty scheme. Customers, we have quite a few million customers that are join loyalty in the past, right? And they want to have their rewards and their chili points in a safe place.
That's very interesting what you're saying around the loyalty piece, and obviously hearing that great feedback from customers. Were you able to actually measure that from a customer's perspective?
Yeah, so again, we are using lots of data, right, to measure our conversions. And yeah, Okta allow us to measure that a bit more, because we have access to all kind of logs around where customers are dropping in the journey. We have very, very specific to understand where they are logging in, which kind of location, and in which event exactly they drop. So we had an app store reviews, lots of app store reviews, and our application were around really, really low in reviews. I think we had like 1 or 2 points. But by implementing a couple of changes, I'm not saying, again, Okta and the new authentication changed the whole thing, but we are now under our category with a 4.7, right? After a few months since we launched Okta, and since we made a couple of changes on the online journey as well to ask for feedback at the relevant point in time. So this is a really good story to tell, right? We went from really low points to 4.7, and it's a really great story to tell to everyone. Again, I'm not saying it's because of the authentication, but it makes a huge impact. We were having reviews like customers saying, "Hey, again, you're not a bank. I just want to get my chilies. I'm not receiving my multi-factor authentication. Where's my code? My code is not valid." So by leveraging the Okta logs, we were able to understand, okay, this customer actually received a multi-factor, but because of whatever happened to his phone provider, he didn't receive it. So Okta was able to tell us that, and we don't have access to that kind of data before. And our customer support team is able to communicate to this customer and say, hey, why don't you try, the real number, right? Because you try a number with more one more character, or things like that. So yeah, I think there was lots of positive. There were lots of negative as well, but because we had lots of data now to look at, so I think it's still a really good thing.
Yeah, it's certainly impressive to hear around the mobile app, and well done to you and the team. It's also interesting what you're saying about exploiting all of the data, and that's an area I kind of want to dig deeper with you. We've kind of went through the impact for your customers, but what was the impact for your own team working on, the Okta project, for example? What was their feedback in what's changed for them?
As mentioned earlier, we used to have our own solution in the past when I joined, and then we moved to another provider. And I must tell you, we use 100% of what they were offering. We don't have much access to their APIs. It was very basic, a solution just to log in and move on. And we are a very technical team, right? Our team really enjoy talking about all flows, OpenID Connect standards. Um, we found that we could have that conversation with Okta, and we, since the first day, we knew we were talking the same language, right? um, yeah, so we are able to work with the professional services as well, and yeah, and leverage the SDKs, especially the JavaScript SDK, React Native SDK. One of the key feedback from within the company was that we were using the web browsers for everything, for logging in within the app, which basically was sending the customer to another browser. And we had lots of unknowns there because you don't know a browser, how it looks like on each of the Android devices, especially. You have multiple versions, multiple ways of things going wrong, right? So Okta were the first one saying, hey, you can perform the authentication directly on the app just by calling our APIs, our SDK, and you're going to get a token. And they were very transparent about that. The team really loved that engagement because, again, they were talking our language, and we were able to draft the journey that we wanted just by using the APIs, right? It's not only what only Okta offers out of the box with a widget, which was great, and we were able to customize 90% of what we wanted, 95, I would say, by using the APIs directly. And that for us was a relief because we didn't have to fight against custom scripts trying to mimic the user and replicate things in automated tests, which really didn't work out in the past. But yeah, I could be talking about this for years. So
So no, it's very interesting to hear about I guess the customization piece, the flexibility as well that it brought to your teams, and I really appreciate that feedback. And you've mentioned working with our professional services, which is part of our customer first organization. Can you tell us a bit more about what that engagement was like for you, and what expertise did you kind of use for your implementation?
yeah, of course. So when we first started the project, we always think, yeah, we know how to do this. Okta, yeah, it must be easy, right? But we found that Okta has so many options, so many ways of doing the same thing, that we knew that we needed some help, right? So you don't know what you don't know, and and we understood that we didn't know lots of things. And the professional services, we had a more like an ad hoc engagement with them. We really didn't want someone just to come in, build a solution for us, and move on, right? We wanted to build that capability within the team, so all the team really understand what they are touching, what API does what, how do you manage the rules in Okta, how do you leverage the MFA rules, the MFA policies, the authentication policies, what is an authorization server, what it allows you to do, how do you change the claims. All these things that we like talking about, they were able to guide us right on the right way. We used to do the engagement like a couple of times a week for a period of, I think it was 3 months or even less, 2 3 months. It was quite good. And we were collecting all the questions that we had of the week for the next week, and we just throwing at them. We have an architect assigned to us, and they actually were really, really useful. We learned a lot along the way, and the team is able to go on their own, right? We are able to build our own things now with very, very little help from support once in a while when things are not really working or when we really need some very, very specific support, right? But we found ourselves that when we raise a support ticket, it's because something big is happening, right? Because there is some kind of bug in one of the SDKs, or there is a weird behavior on a specific Android version. So yeah, we are able to get to that point with them.
And it's I like the fact that, obviously you're mentioning that you're quite self-sufficient now. How did you get to that point? Did you invest as well in training, or what was the learning path for your teams?
We used to do lots of knowledge from the previous things we did. I'm not gonna say mistakes because yeah, some of them were mistakes, some of them were good things. Um, yeah, so we had prior knowledge about that, and we engaged with Okta. Okta was always there to support us, right? We have any specific question, the documentation on the website is really good, especially on the forums where the open source community as well. They did some contributions, and we did as well the certification, the developer certification. Okta gave us some tokens to, and some of our members did that, and that was really really useful. They really challenge you on some of the things. um, yeah, so that was mainly how we did things, right? So we wanted to do things good from the beginning, right? Try to automate as much as possible. We use infrastructure as code. We knew that Okta offered the Terraform provider, and that's what we wanted to use from the beginning. Yeah, because it gave us access to the APIs as well to understand what's going on behind the scenes, right? Not only go into the UI and just start pressing some buttons and see what happens, right? So we are quite confident now that we can deliver a feature and break a couple of environments before reaching production, which happened a few times.
That's a good tip.
Yeah.
And in terms of obviously you've already come quite a long way. What's next for you for Nando's?
One of the key things for us is use more like the data to run personalization and custom experience, right? So data is everywhere, but data is dangerous as well, right? We need to be very, very careful with the GDPR compliance and with the regulations, right, within UK and Europe. So one of the things we want to do is just, again, use personalization, capture the data at the right time to offer custom experience. We may want to show a different parts of the website for you because you did a couple of actions in the past, or you're looking from a different location, right? So Okta allow us to build that for us, right? So we are moving to a more like a zero trust architecture as well, where we just don't rely on being on a specific network, right, to log in. We just don't trust anyone. We just authorize you to perform an action by asking you who you are first, right? And if we detect any pattern, any weird behavior, we just challenge you for MFA, or maybe we ask you for extra security things. So yeah, building all these kind of things is really really hard. So you need to rely on someone like Okta, right, to provide that for you. There are lots of vendors out there that could give you a specific tool, but there are no vendors who can give you the whole thing for you, right, to really make your customers trust your brand, right? This is our end goal at the end of the day, right? Whatever data you give to us, we're going to make sure it's secure and no one else can access it, right?
Thank you so much, Miguel. And maybe one last question for you, and hopefully that will benefit to a lot of listeners today. If you had kind of, your top advice for any organization embarking in the same type of journey, what would that be?
I would say just take security seriously, right? Again, zero trust, never trust, always verify your customers, invest on security and best practices and handling customer data. Yeah, make sure you know who is accessing your application. You have visibility of what's going on behind the scenes, on who is accessing what at which point in time and how, right? Because that pays off at the end of the day and lets you sleep at night. So just take it seriously. Some companies just, yeah, that's login button, that's it. But lots of things could go wrong. And if you leverage a company like ours, where we have more than 10 million customers, if you have a security hole, the customers are gonna find it, right? No matter what, it's gonna happen. So yeah, that's I think a good advice in that.
Yeah, great advice indeed. Thank you so much, Miguel, for being with us today, and excited to see what the future holds for you.
Thanks so much, Jasmine.